Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
In this edition of Global Print, I will tell you about two books that have been top of mind this past week. The first by Barack Obama, called A Promised Land, which is about his first term in the White House, and the second, closer home, a book by the former Pakistani ISI chief Asad Durrani, whose work is a book of fiction, but a very cleverly disguised one. But before I explain to you or talk to you about both these books, dear viewer, I'd like to make an appeal to you. Please do subscribe and pay just a little for ThePrint's unhyphenated, free, fair, and objective journalism. You know that we have been trying to bring to you the best news stories, the best videos over the past several months and the past 3 years, actually. And so please do support us, pay a little bit so that we can continue to do so. The links for this subscription, for both for an international audience and for a national one, are in the description of this video. So back to Global Print this week, where I discuss unusually about these two books. The first by Barack Obama, like I said, called A Promised Land, which is about his first tenure in the White House, and how on a trip to Delhi he meets the Congress party leadership. He has very warm words to say about former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. He calls him an utterly decent man. About Rahul Gandhi, the younger Congress leader, he's not as complimentary. He says he has a nervous and unformed quality about him, as if Rahul was a young student who was trying to finish his coursework, but didn't really know what he was, what his thoughts or his worldview were. And he refers to this dinner party, which is that was probably thrown in his honor in Delhi. And Sonia Gandhi, Rahul's mother, then Congress president, all sort of directs the conversation towards her son and wants him to be the hero of the evening, indirectly at least. But it doesn't seem as if Obama is very impressed. But Obama also talks about the divisive nationalism of the BJP, and he wonders whether the Congress party's dynastic tradition, mother handing over the reins to her son, whether this will be enough to unseat the BJP. And clearly, as we've seen, that it's not enough. So in that sense, Barack Obama is absolutely right in what he says. He has an unerring instinct about politics. And this perception of his about India, at least so far, is correct. But the second book, which I am much more fascinated about, is called Honor Among Spies by the retired General Asad Durrani. He has been Pakistan's ISI chief, which is Pakistan's intelligence agency, a very, very influential post, and therefore Asad Durrani was, of course, a very influential man. He was ISI chief from 1990 to 1993. Very interesting years, very important years in India, because in the wake of the disintegration of the Soviet Union, when the world was sort of realigning itself in various ways, here in India, in Kashmir, the homegrown insurgency that began in the Kashmir Valley, which was stoked by Pakistan and none other than by Asad Durrani, who sent in Pakistani infiltrators to stoke this homegrown insurgency in Pakistan. And therefore, of course, Asad Durrani knows not just this part of Kashmir very well, but he also knows India. Because a couple of years ago, he co-authored a book with India's former head of the External Intelligence Agency, RNAW or RAW, Mr. A.S. Dulat. Now, Asad Durrani and Mr. Dulat co-authored this book called the Spy Chronicles a couple of years ago. It was launched in Delhi. General Durrani did not get a visa to come to India, but subsequently in real life, Asad Durrani is hauled up by his own former agency, brought in and interrogated. Now, this interrogation is what this book is about. Now, the book is a piece of fiction, is a work of fiction, like I said, but it's very thinly disguised fiction. So Asad Durrani himself, he's a protagonist of the book. His name is Osama Barakzai. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, at the time Prime Minister of Pakistan, is Naveen Sheikh. The current army chief, General Javed Bajwa, is Jabbar Jatt. the former ISI chief and the former Pakistan Army chief, Ashfaq Kiani, is Raja Rasalu. And similarly, there are, several names. And Parvez Musharraf is Gulrez Sheikh. Now, it's really interesting, and anybody who's been an observer of Pakistan these past few decades knows exactly what Asad Durrani is talking about. So let me just give you a flavor of it. Now, in the wake of the publication of the Spy Chronicles, his interrogation unfolds in real life in Rawalpindi, which is the headquarters of the ISI and the army, where he is asked again and again why he collaborated with an Indian, not just an Indian, but an Indian spy or a former Indian spy, because didn't he know that he was collaborating with the enemy? And Asad Durrani takes some pains to say that, look, it's not that this is the first time that I've met Mr. Dulat, who in the book is called Randhir Singh, and he tells his interlocutors that he has met with Randhir Singh or the real-life Mr. Dulat on several occasions in several track 2 dialogues, and his views on India-Pakistan are there for all to read because he has been writing several columns about it. But the book is a very nuanced and a very critical take on the goings-on of Pakistan's intelligence services or the establishment. Now, we know that Pakistan is run by the establishment, that the political parties are in many ways, while they're elected by the people, but in many ways are directly or indirectly controlled by the army and the ISI. And when people like Nawaz Sharif, who fall foul of the army, are quickly evicted and on some excuse or the other exiled, like Nawaz Sharif is now exiled in London. But coming back to Osama Barakzai, so there is the India angle, which is why did he collaborate with the enemy? But then, as the book unfolds, you come to read or you come to realize that Osama Barakzai's problem is not really about the collaboration with an Indian spy. But the problem is that in the wake of the assassination of Osama Bin Laden in Abbottabad, which is a town just a couple of hours away from Rawalpindi, which is the headquarters, like I said, of the ISI and the army, and within spitting distance of the Kakul Pakistani Military Training Academy, Osama bin Laden had been living in this 3-story house with several wives and several children and grandchildren. Now, we all know this in retrospect, and how the Americans conducted this very daring raid in May 2011. And the Navy SEALs in their choppers, these American choppers, came right in, swooped into Abbottabad, landed, and then how the Navy SEALs sort of go into this compound, into this house where Osama bin Laden, the world's most wanted terrorist with $25 million on his head. They go into the house, attack him, kill him, and the rest, as we know, is history. The question is, all hell breaks loose, of course, after that. But the big question is, how did the Americans know that Osama bin Laden was hiding in plain sight? How did they come into Pakistan, even though Pakistan is an ally in the war against terror in Afghanistan next door? But how did American planes break into Pakistani radar and land in Abbottabad? Was there an inside man who tipped them off? Was this done in conjunction or at least in the know of the Pakistani establishment? Did the Pakistani establishment give the green signal? How did it happen? Now, this is not very easy. Nobody, for example, can come into Indian airspace and do what it wants to do. I mean, that would amount to war, because somebody did that. That would signal unholy intentions, and that would really be a signal for war. So now, Osama Barakzai, or in real life, General Asad Durrani, retired by now, in the wake of the May 2011 death or killing of Osama bin Laden, gives several interviews to several news media all over the world, to the American press, to Al Jazeera, and even writes about it in the Spy Chronicles that he has in this book that he collaborates with Mr. Dulat. where he talks about the fact and insinuates actually that there was an insider onto the American plan, and that basically that Pakistan gave the green signal for the Americans to come in and to take out Osama bin Laden. Independently of what Asad Durrani has been saying, subsequently, much later in 2017, Steve Call, the very well-known American journalist, then with the Washington Post, formerly an editor with the Washington Post, and now he works at Columbia University, writes a book called Directorate S, which is a very small part of Pakistan's ISI, very, very secretive part of it, which, according to Steve Call, was the one that was mandated to carry out this very, very top secret operation in conjunction with the Americans. Basically, that the Pakistanis gave the intelligence to the Americans and the Americans carried out that operation. So Steve Call, independently of Asad Durrani, has confirmed this, that the Pakistanis were in on the Osama bin Laden operation. But Asad Durrani, who is not to know of what Steve Call says in 2017, because remember, this operation takes place in 2011. By then, Asad Durrani has already retired. But in several media interviews around the world, using his analysis as a former ISI chief, as somebody who's grown in the organization, who understands it, who understands how Pakistan functions, tells people that this is what he believes. He says he doesn't know the real, whether the information is 100% accurate or not, but this is his analysis. And this is why Osama Barakzai, in the book In Honor Among Spies, has been called in and is being interrogated. That's the real reason. It's not as much as the fact that he is talking to an Indian, but because he has spilled state secrets, endangered, according to the Pakistani establishment, endangered national security, and told the world that Pakistan helped the Americans take out the most wanted man in the world. So that's why Asad Durrani is in the dock, or Osama Barakzai is in the dock in the book. This is such a fascinating book because Osama Barakzai then wants to prove his innocence, and he shuns. But how does he do that? Because nobody's believing him. He's being interrogated, like I said, by the military. So how does he prove his innocence? So he shuns the civilian court and goes to a Sharia court, which is another irony. But reconfirming the thought that who is it that runs Pakistan? If it's not the army, it's Allah or religious parties. So the Sharia court being far more important than the civilian court. And this is where Osama Barakzai hopes to prove his innocence. So read my piece, Global Print, in the website. And do tell me what you think of this video. Do subscribe and pay a little for the Print's unhyphenated journalism. And thank you so much for watching this video.